information that I'd love to share with more people than just my patients. I love to prevent people from becoming patients, and I really enjoy all the wellness activities that I get to do. So the Pilates and the TRX, and some of you have done running assessments with me. So that's it from me, basically. Tonight we're just going to go through a lecture that I've spoken in the San Francisco Marathon, I've done through UCSF, but I've updated it for you guys a little bit, and we're going to talk about some different things. So how many of you are currently training for something or running regularly? And when you're running, is running all you do, or are you incorporating other cross-training activities and strengthening, and you're incorporating? Okay. Good. Well, it sounds like we can all go home. So I'm a runner too. I've been running since I was 16. A good friend of mine got me into it, and I'm not super duper competitive or anything, but I love doing half marathons. I've done a couple marathons, and what I found was I generally feel best when I'm incorporating a component of strength training, and I actually feel like I am running faster and more efficient, and guess what? The research supports that. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. Somebody asked me earlier what I'm training for. I'm getting ready to start my US half training, which is going to be a good mental challenge because I got really burned out after my last marathon. And I used to lead a community running group that Justine was part of, and that was fun just to share that education. So I think before we talk about why strength training is so important, I want to just hit on the basics, the phases of running. And so we can break it down very easily into 3 different segments. There's your initial contact, and some of you we'll have a little bit of debate about where that contact is. A lot of the hot topic right now is heel strike correct? Is toe touch or forefoot strike correct, or is it a midfoot? And that may be a topic for another night, but wherever your foot lands first, that's considered your initial contact. And then we've got your absorption, and that's where your body absorbs all the forces and the impact forces from the ground. And then we've got swing, so that's pretty easy to imagine. It's when your leg is swinging through the ground. And I want to just hit on kind of the major muscle groups and what they're doing during running, because all the muscle groups are working at all times, whether you're absorbing and hitting impact or your leg is swimming through the air. So quads are what we often think of as a major running muscle, and a lot of us don't know how to turn off our quads. We're pretty what we call quad dominant. So the quads are most active from late swing, so when that leg is swinging back, all the way through to mid-stance. Okay, so that's where you've gone through initial contact and landed in mid-stance. They're preparing the limb for hitting the ground, and then they absorb a lot of the force. So we were talking a little bit earlier about returning to running and having those sore muscles, and that's those muscles starting to absorb the forces. Again, most of our other activities we do don't have a lot of forces. So cycling, there's not a lot of ground impact force. Swimming, no ground reaction force. So it's those quads that are really taking the bulk of that absorption of force and impact. Hamstrings, you might think that they pull the leg up or pull the heel, but their main role is to actually decelerate this part of the leg as you prepare to strike the ground. So they are eccentrically, meaning they're lengthening. So an eccentric contraction is a lengthening contraction versus a concentric contraction, which is a shortening contraction. I'll try not to use too much anatomy or terms. But their main role is here to slow that ground. So that's why you see a lot of hamstring strains in people, is that muscle's not conditioned to slow the leg. And so people are overstriding, and lots of different reasons why you get a hamstring strain, but that's where they're really most important in running. Hip abductors. What do these guys do? Anybody ever been in PT for a knee or a hip or a back or a foot injury? And what did they tell you? Probably
hip flexors.
Yeah, or your kind of, tiny hip flexors, which can inhibit kind of glutes. So the glutes, or the hip abductors as they're collectively known, their role isn't to stand, and I feel like I've broken record today, I've said this multiple times, their role isn't to abduct the hip, it's to stabilize the opposite side of the pelvis. So when you land, you've absorbed the weight through the force through the quad, this muscle group is going to work to prevent a hip drop, because otherwise if it didn't work, you'd be running down the road with the hip wiggle. And I watch women especially walk and do that. And I think they think it's so cute, and to me it just screams weak glutes. This is my mind, how I think. So yeah, basically they help prevent a level pelvis. Women especially, it's funny that we're all women here right now, but we all kind of have this tendency to drop our knees inward chronic pain syndrome, lots of different things, trochanteric bursitis, IT band. So those glutes are also responsible for helping maintain that neutral alignment of the leg during running. Then we've got the calf. What do you think the calf's good for? In San Francisco, what's it good for?
Climbing hills.
Yeah, propulsion up hills, but probably more importantly, it's responsible for helping to control pronation. And pronation is not a dirty word. Pronation is a normal function of the foot to absorb energy before the quads have to take the bulk of it. But the calf helps prevent or slow down too much of that flat foot position. And it helps with push-off, like when you're running up hills. I think one of the most common injuries for a new runner to San Francisco, or a new San Franciscan who's been a runner, is Achilles tendonitis, calf muscle pull, things like that, when they're just not used to running up hills. I threw the core and the upper body in because we don't typically think of those as running muscles, but I think you're all smart enough to understand that the core is an important running group. And when I'm talking about the core, I imagine that I'm chopping off my head, my arms and my legs, and I'm left with my core. So it's not just my abdominals. I actually consider my pelvic core, my glutes, my back muscles, my diaphragm, my pelvic floor, so those deep internal muscles, those are all muscles of the core. They actually help with the transfer of force from the lower body to the upper body, and they help provide a stable base from which those muscles of the legs we just talked about attach. So if you've got stability here, these muscles that propel and absorb and slow down movements have a better line of pull because they're not trying to control a sloppy pelvis. And then upper body. When you guys are doing strength training, do you include upper body? Do you only do upper body? Is it a combo? Do a combo? Okay. Yeah, and some good core stuff in there too. Yeah, and if you think about it, the upper body, a strong upper body can give you more power. And it can just keep you moving down the road a little bit faster. So I think kind of knowing the major muscle groups helps us think about how we would craft a program. So what is strength training? Marta? We're going to be interactive here.
Do you want the
Like the Merriam-Webster dictionary definition.
strength training is moving a muscle through some resistance, right?
Yeah.
And it's full range to make it stronger.
That's right. Right, it's working against resistance to create a muscle contraction with the idea of developing strength, endurance, and hypertrophy of the muscle, or making bigger muscles. Okay? So, what are the other benefits of strength training? And these, you guys know these, I don't have to tell you, but I'm going to tell you. So it actually helps increase endocrine and immune function. And a lot of endurance athletes, people who run a lot, cycle a lot, their immune systems are actually suppressed. So that strength training helps support that. Helps maintain muscle mass. And an interesting thing was I could not find a legitimate statistic for when we actually start to lose muscle mass. I saw as early as the age of 20, which scared me to death, you start losing 5% after the age of, every decade after the age of 35. So it's kind of, we know that as you age, you start to lose muscle mass. So how do you prevent that loss? You strength train. I know, this is some wide eyes, sorry. I'm not telling you anything new. The other thing that, great, we have a crowd of women, bone density. And we have a crowd of, women who need to start thinking about that. Endurance athletes and, thin women, we all have this tendency of needing to maintain bone density. Do you guys, any of you have a history of osteopenia or fibrosis in your family? Yeah. And you're fair skinned and it kind of fits the type. But we know that weight bearing and strengthening exercise can help maintain bone density. There's an old theorem, Wolff's law, that says bone is laid down in the direction it's stressed. So bone is, hopefully continuing to form as you're stressing it with the resistance. And for me as a PT, what I'm looking for is strength training helps correct muscle imbalances. And we all have muscle imbalances. You show me a symmetric person and I will retire tomorrow. I don't know what I'll do. But for whatever we're doing, if we're sitting and working at a computer that's over here, if we carry a bag on our left shoulder, if we, I have a patient today, she's a bartender and she can't use her right arm now. So she had to retrain herself to use her left. But you better believe she's got muscle imbalances from doing something the same way all the time. So strength training can actually identify, if you're working with a trained individual, identify and correct those muscle imbalances. So for me, we talked a lot about absorption of energy, and these are some really interesting facts that I always kind of hang on to. For me, a lot of it's about injury prevention. My bread and butter is treating injuries, but I would much rather educate and absorption phase. And statistics vary, but that, when we talk about absorption, it's kind of that mid-stance, so initial contact, then mid-stance. 30 milliseconds from when your foot hits the ground to when you're in that mid-stance. 5 times faster than walking. So walking is kind of like, hey, you can almost feel the transition from when you touch to when you absorb. But in running, it's 30 milliseconds, which is pretty fast. Some of that absorption reduces the force of impact, but most of it is stored in your muscles to help with propulsion. So absorption is a good thing. You need it to move down the road. Most injuries in the body occur with repetition, and it's basically combining fatigue with the body's ability to repair itself. So people always say to me, well, I've been doing this for years and I've never been hurt. Well, everybody has this threshold, and the body's in this constant state of breakdown and rebuilding, and if your activity or something in you exceeds the ability of the body to repair itself, injuries are going to occur. These were some interesting statistics. Achilles tendon, have any of you guys ever had Achilles pain? Oh yeah, I remember that. Achilles tendon forces have been estimated to be approximately 6 to 8 times body weight in the Achilles tendon with running. And patellofemoral contact, so how your kneecap articulates or reacts with your femur, between 7 to 11 times your body weight. So think of your body weight, now multiply that by 10, and those are the forces going through those joints. So the other thing is, we talked about that 30 milliseconds between initial contact and mid-stance. Most of the forces occur in mid-stance. So it's not when your leg is flying through the air that you're going to get hurt. It's when you've landed and absorbed that you're more likely to become injured. And what percentage of force from running do you think is absorbed at the knee? Your range? 10? 60? 100? 150. Close, 70 to 80% of the forces are absorbed at the knee. So that's why I think people are like, oh, running's so bad for your knees. It's not. You just have to be prepared and ready for those forces. So I run into a lot of common myths with trying to get runners to strength train. Have you guys always done strength training? Yes, okay. Yeah, runners like to run. They don't want to be in the gym. They want to throw on their shoes if they remember to pack them on their business trip and hit the road and go run. They don't want to be stuck in the gym. They also don't want a lot of equipment. That's why running is such a great sport. You don't need a lot. So the big myth I hear is, I actually don't need to do strength training because running strengthens my legs. How many of you have said that? So running does help your legs, but it really helps with the endurance component, not necessarily the strength component. So we know that increased strength provides the ability to generate more force, which will power you down the road, more propulsion, more absorption. We already hammered that point to death, right? Quads help absorb the forces. So bigger quads leads to better ability to absorb those forces' impact. Stronger arm and leg muscles give you more power for running uphill. So thinking about where we live and the runs we have to do. And I like this statistic. So in older runners, when they look at older runners, let me make sure I got this right. The stride rate doesn't necessarily change, but the stride length can shorten. So the number of steps they're taking per minute is probably on par with even a younger runner, but it's actually the length of their stride. It's more of I don't want to say a shuffle gait, but it's a smaller stride. So there's research that shows that strength training can help maintain that stride length along with a good program of flexibility training too. Questions so far? We're good? We're going to get up and move here in a minute, so don't get too cozy. So the goal really of strength training in older adults is to maintain that gluteal strength to help the hip get back, and then quadriceps flexibility so you can get this power. If the quads and hip flexors are flexible and the glutes are strong, you can get a little bit more power in your run and maintain that stride length.
So are those really the two priorities of strength training for running, like flexibility in the quads and strength in the glutes?
I would hate to simplify it that much. I know, sorry. But I did, I'm going to give you guys a program tonight, and I tried to make this concise and comprehensive and collecting all, getting as much as we can in the fewest amount of exercise as possible. So I think those are definitely goals, but there's other things too. And depending on you, there may be other things you need to worry about, the strength and balances and things like that. So great question. Running more those of you, those of you who have tried the short, I mean, the fewer and the more, have you noticed a huge change in times in either way? Okay. Have you noticed a change in rate of injury if you had any injuries? When did you have more injuries? The more running, the more you run. Yeah. I think the general thought is that the more I do of something, the better I'll be at it. But actually, there's a lot of research studies that show the opposite is true. I actually, for the past probably 2 to 3 years, have followed a program called Run Less, Run Faster, and I think I made you guys get the book or suggested you read it. And it's awesome. There are 3 really hard runs with days of cross-training and strength training. And I'll tell you, it knocked time off. So I'm not necessarily here to advocate a specific training approach. More, I wanted just to tell you the importance of the strength training. So the research studies are pretty shocking, and there's a ton of them. I'm just going to highlight a few because I don't want to bog you down in science too much. But there was a study at the University of Alabama that showed that 10 weeks of resistance training in trained distance runners improved running economy by 8 to 10%. So if we want to think about that, that's about 20 to 24 minutes off of a 4-hour marathon. I'd love to cut 20 minutes off a marathon. And so they just did 10 weeks. Now the question is, well, they were trained elite runners. Are you going to have the same effect in somebody who's not an elite runner? There was a research review, so they basically scanned all of the research out there, and Saunders and his group showed that strength training improves running economy in trained and untrained distance runners. So that's the ability to run farther, faster, longer with more efficiency. So the body's using oxygen better and more effectively, and the whole process is going more smoothly. Another study showed that some people say, well, running and strength training can be kind of counterproductive. So when do I do it? How do I do it? This study by Sale and his group showed that concurrent strength training and endurance training does not negatively impact your endurance performance. So there's a lot of bodies of research on some of these studies. And I mean, there are current studies, but some of these studies have been going on for a long time. So I think the research is out there that shows that it's only going to help your running if you add the strength training in. Myth 3 is that I just don't have time. I don't have time to do it. And my thought is always well, you have time to run. It's more of I think you don't like it, so you're not willing to make time to do it. But I'll go with the I don't have time to do it. So there was a group of French researchers that showed adding only 2 weight training sessions per week for 14 weeks significantly increased maximal strength and running economy, but maintained peak power in triathletes. They looked at a group of triathletes. The control group only did their endurance training. So triathletes are cross-training. They're running, swimming, and biking. That's good. We like that. But this control group did no other strength training. And their peak power actually decreased, and their VO2 max stayed about the same, while the group that was doing strength training, their ability to use oxygen to power and fuel their run increased. And then lastly, there were some scientists in Finland that found replacing 32%, I love this number, it's such a specific, 32% of your regular training volume, your endurance training volume, with explosive resistance training. So imagine circuit training or some plyometrics, agility, for 9 weeks, improved 5K times, running economy, VO2 max, your body's ability to use oxygen, max 20 meter speed, and a performance on a jump test where they had to jump up and down 5 times. And with the exception of the VO2 max, none of those other measures improved in the group that just did their endurance training. So it's pretty, the statistics are there, it's just we just have to do it. So the kicker is we don't really know what the ideal program. We know that strength training in some form is helpful. We just don't know, there's not a perfect program. Because there's so many variables, different body types, different types of runs, too many variables. But I think that what we do know is that with strength training, you'll be able to run faster and longer. So when you guys do your circuit training, what types of things are strength training? Are you doing heavy weights? Are you doing more aerobic circuit training type things? What's the trend?
I do yoga.
You do yoga? Yeah, awesome. So strength training comes in various forms: Pilates, yoga, TRX, weights. What do you guys do?
Pilates.
You do Pilates?
Weights and
TRX.
Yep. popular? Why does everything have to be sports specific? That's just still how I think and Jess and I were talking about this earlier, like if you want the body to do something, then you should train it in that way to do it. But there's controversy and there's a difference of opinions and there is no right answer. So, if anybody tells you that this way is the only way, run. Because we all have different ways of doing things and it's just kind of what works best for you and what feels best for you as long as you're getting some muscle going. So we talk about different types. Circuit training, as you know, just involves short exercises at high intensity. We actually had our first circuit training class here last night, which was a blast. We had 6 people in 14 different stations, and everything was moved around, but heated this place up a little bit. It's useful if you're kind of getting back into shape to help supplement that cardiovascular component. And there was a study in 2005 in the British Journal of Sports Medicine that showed circuit training performed after running or endurance training produced faster 4K, I've not done that distance before, 4K results than endurance training alone. So that the question was, well, when should we do it? Should we do it before our run? Should we do it after our run? What do you guys typically do? Are you doing yoga on the same day that you're running, or are you doing off days?
Almost 100% off days.
Off days, yeah, just would
I
be.
actually find when I do yoga the day before my run, I actually do feel better.
Yeah.
I think I feel more tired just having the yoga.
Yeah. Well, and I think part of that is you've lengthened the muscles and then you've fired up the core stabilizer, so you probably are just more powerful in your run. I kind of go back and forth if I feel like you sacrifice a little bit of your strengthening if you run before, but you sacrifice your run if you strength train before. So it's kind of like, what is your goal for that specific workout? I found this study to be quite interesting though, that if you do it after your run, this group actually had faster 4K times than doing it at a different time. So when I think about developing a strength training program for runners, are all my runners on the same program? Absolutely not. But I typically will you see trends in runners, you typically see weak glute meets, you'll see short hip flexors, tight quads, over recruitment of the quads, just different things. So you start to see these trends. What you have to be careful of as a practitioner is that you don't get blinded and only see those trends, because other people can present with totally different things. I identify the demands of the sport. I've already hinted at that a little bit. So I think sport specific. What does this person need to do their sport, whether it's running or cycling or golf or tennis? I like to work at a closed chain pattern. And so what that means is that every muscle in the body works open chain and closed chain. Open chain would be like if you were seated on a leg extension machine and you were pushing the weight up by extending your knee. Your foot is free to move. Closed chain would be your foot is fixed and your body's moving over that muscle. So every muscle does that, it's just where their line of pull is slightly different. So running is pretty much closed chain. I mean, one leg is always up in the air. That's what differentiates running from walking. But that impact, I think we better, train that. Closed chain exercises also decrease joint compression forces by creating a co-contraction of muscles around the joint. In other words, when I'm in a push-up position or I'm in a squat position, muscles on both sides of the joints are firing to provide stability and good joint positioning. And then we talk about the core. We've already talked a little bit about the core and running. It helps with transmission of force, propulsion, absorption. This is a really tough question too. And before I started working for TRX, I don't think I really thought much about it. Is there a difference between core strength and core stability? What do you think? Or are those two words synonymous? It's okay, we don't know. I didn't even know. Or I didn't think about it much. What do you think?
I think it'd be overlapping. I think it'd be the same thing.
Okay. So, and I didn't think much of it. And I think they do to some extent. Core stability is the body's ability to resist perturbations. In other words, I can be stable and I can be standing, somebody can kind of come along and push me, and I stiffen up a little bit to be stable. Versus strength, if I was pushing a heavier refrigerator, that takes stability, but it also takes strength. So they're kind of two different things. When we're generally doing most of our core work, I think a lot of it we focus on strength and not so much stability, and I think we need to focus more on stability and not so much strength, because you need a stable spine. You don't need a lot of strong, movement muscles. You need that stability of the trunk when you're running. And we've already talked about a stable core provides us a base from which all of those muscles of the pelvis attach. This was another great study. There were 2 groups of people where one group participated in a 6-week core stability program. The other group did no core strengthening, and the core group demonstrated faster times in their 5,000 meter run. So, I mean, clearly, let's just beat a dead horse. Strengthening, stability work, it's all going to make you faster. The other thing I like to do is identify not only the demands of the sport, but the limitations of the sport. So when you think about everything we do in life, running, cycling, freestyle, they're all in the same plane of motion, right? We're this. Tennis players, basketball players, they're doing the lateral stuff. Dancers, martial arts, golf, they're doing rotation. So running doesn't do much of that. So I like to identify what's missing from that routine and add it in. Because if you're only strengthening in the same plane of motion, you're missing a lot of other movements and the ability to just be strong in everything. And somebody said to me, well, why do I need that? Well, imagine, you're running across the street to catch a bus and you have to swipe a pothole. If your body's not used to going there, you could.
Or you're running past the ferry building.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Especially last weekend when it was naked bike day. I got stuck in that last year. Running down the Embarcadero, naked bikes coming at me. And you better believe I had to work on my agility. So I think agility may even be room for another topic, but strengthening and preparing the body for movements will not only help you be ready for those movements, but just make you an overall stronger person. Questions? Think I'm crazy about adding all this weird stuff?
No, you just kind of did a commercial, I think, for gyrotonics.
Yeah, there you go. Or TRX, multiplanar. No, you're absolutely right. And then lastly, I like to, partly because I want to be as efficient as possible. I mean, we don't have hours in the day to do strength training and running and all the other things we like to do. I like to do functional whole body movements. So if I can get the arms working while the legs and the trunk are working, great. I have a friend who's just finishing PT school, and this guy is miles ahead of everybody else at his level. And he said to the patient the other day, said to him, give me a core exercise. And he said, let me see your best single leg squat. And he gave one other exercise. And they went, what? He said, that's your core exercise. Because you have to have a strong, stable core in order to do a quality single leg squat appropriately. So I thought that was interesting. We don't necessarily have to break each body part down into its component parts to get benefit. Think about yoga and Pilates. You're not sitting there doing a weight. You're moving everything at the same time. It's how the body works together running is a multi-joint coordinated movement. So let's make our strengthening like that. So now's the time you get to move. We are going to go through 7 exercises. And you don't have to do them with me. I think it's helpful to see what it feels like so that you can ask questions. Veronica and I made handouts that you can take with you. Okay? If I see these photocopies floating around, just kidding. But I don't know, would you rather have them while we go through it so you can kind of remember, or do you want me to show? Okay.
Is he giving the picture?
It is. Don't laugh. My little photographer, we've had a couple photo sessions the past couple of days, and I've been exhausted by the time we've been done.
And it needs a little smudgy, so just.
Oh, that is a little smudgy, she says. And if you have friends that you think would benefit from this, so feel free to take it extra. I'll leave them up here. So, if you're going to participate with me, which I love, let's look at the first one, squat press it. Everybody up.
We have some abs over there too.
I don't think we're really going to get down on the ground. We might. Yeah, I'll grab these mats. So if you want to grab, I don't know where to go to.
We have some of this.
Yeah, it is that. So squat with overhead press, I like to do with a weight. You can do it with a medicine ball. So this is kind of one plane of movement, right?
Do you have to do this with weight?
No, none of these have to be done with weight. And I think in most of the descriptions I talk about that. So if you're on the road for work, you could do it with a TherapydiaSF, holding a TherapydiaSF, or nothing. I think body weight resistance is great. So with the squat, the thing I want to be most emphasize most is your back position. I see a lot of poorly done squats. So what I'm looking for in a squat, regardless if we're doing the overhead press, is that your spine and your shins are about the same angle. In other words, I don't want you here, and I don't want a forward spine angle. I also don't want I don't even know if I can do it, a vertical shin. Somewhere somebody along the way convinced us all that it's really bad to have the knees go forward. It's not. It's not. Like, they do that in real life. And just today I was having somebody shift forward. He's like, oh, I feel my quads and my glutes a little bit more. So just making sure that this angle matches this angle. So with the overhead press, I'll grab the weights down, and as I stand, I'll press up. So again, we're working on that power of the arms. And again, I like it because it's a total body exercise.
Yeah.
Okay? So that's numero uno.
So if we were to use weights with this, like,
Yeah.
is it good to do bigger weights and lower reps, or higher reps and lower weights?
Good question, and that was a topic that came up a lot in our research, and I really think it's kind of goal dependent. Back to, we don't really know the ideal program. This is something similar that a lot of runners are afraid they're going to bulk up, and so they think lighter and more reps, but in reality, true strength training comes from overloading the muscle. So don't be afraid of harder, heavier weights. What I don't want is it to be heavy enough to, that you're not ready for it and you break down somewhere, but if you can maintain form, I think, traditional strength training of harder weights with fewer reps is going to be helpful. I mix it up. Just because I get bored with one thing. Now, that's me, and a strength and conditioning coach may laugh at me, but I think kind of pick your goal for the day. If you're having a rest day, like a lighter day where you've had, or a week where you're kind of backing off a little bit, maybe you maintain the form, maybe you do some lighter and some more reps. And then if you're having a true, okay, I'm gonna really work on strength, because you're trying to hypertrophy those muscles, not bulk up. You're not gonna get bulky, because you're doing enough endurance training that you're not gonna get bulky. Okay, great question. And the jury is still out in some, or maybe the jury's not out, but different camps believe different things.
And then just one question about your feet, like,
Yeah.
or what's
This is also the jury, the camps are divided. Some people say find a comfortable position, others are much more strict. I favor a hip width position with your feet pointing forward. Sometimes skeletally somebody needs to toe out a little bit, but as much as you can get those feet straight ahead, and just what's kind of comfortable for you. In the description I talk about when you're coming out of that squat, imagine that you're spreading the ground between your feet. And all that does is create some glute recruitment. So imagine that there's Laffy Taffy or something between your feet, and you're spreading that ground out, almost like you're pushing apart a little bit. And you should feel an immediate kick in of those muscles. Feel that? Good. And sometimes we don't have the range of motion, like my thoracic spine tends to get stiff, so I can get down about so far, and then it's hard for me to maintain that extension. So maybe I work with this range of motion. Whew. Okay, one exercise done. Lunge with rotation. So here we are combining two planes, a sagittal plane, which is this motion, but a rotation too. And actually, this is going to show up in a lot of my runners' homework because this rotation helps fire up the glute a little bit. And so I'll do kind of a walking lunge with rotation. You do not have to use a medicine ball. Okay.
I'll twist toward the leg itself.
For this specific version. There may be a rationale why you do the other, but for this one, just to facilitate the glutes. Yeah. And if it's too much coordination to do both at once, step, then rotate. Step, and rotate. We did this one last night in our second class.
My buns are
Sorry for it.
It's on fire.
Questions about the lunge with rotation?
Yes, me.
I love it.
How far do you want to bend each knee?
You want about a 90-degree bend if you can. Now, if you have patellofemoral kneecap pain and it doesn't feel good to go down that low, listen to your body. But the ideal squat is a 90-degree bend of both knees.
I don't know.
And an upright trunk, right? A fairly erect trunk. You don't want to be here. And you don't want to be here necessarily. You can do it with this, I bet. There you go. And if the walking component adds too much complexity, or you don't have a lot of room, you're in a hotel room, standing, you could do standing same side, or standing alternating sides. I'm not going to get too picky with that. Make it fit your environment. Side lunge to balance. Interestingly, quite hard. Okay. Side lunge to balance is side lunge, and I like, the reason I have you guys reach into the ground with some of these is it helps facilitate a glute contraction. So every muscle kind of has to go through a stretch before it can contract. So you can kind of feel the glute stretching as you lean forward. It tells the muscle, okay, you're going to contract, and then you're going to press up to balance. Again, this is super hard even without a weight. Hard, huh? And here we're working dynamic balance. You guys could stand on your foot all day long if I just said stand on your foot. But running is almost a little bit of balance as you run down the road. Golf is balance.
Will you do this one again?
Yeah. That's not nice, Justine. You're just
I'm trying to figure out how to do it.
down. Yep. The opposite leg is going straight. And then, so this contraction here, this stretch, prepares this leg to contract and pull you back up. So their legs are working together.
And when you pull up, this one goes up.
Yeah, I pull up just to kind of get me there and hold that balance. Got it? Good? All right.
It's like my Thursday training session with
Yeah.
my trainer.
This is it, exactly. I sat in, fly on the wall now. Flipping over on the backside, we've got single leg deadlift. And so, see, a deadlift, is a very common hamstring, eccentric hamstring strengthener, because your hamstrings are lengthening to lower you to the ground and then contracting to bring you up. Single legs adds a whole new component to it. I think performing a really good deadlift is very hard. The form is tricky. Making sure you're not doing something wrong with your back. The single leg is hard from a balance standpoint. I just make the form a little easier. So single leg deadlift, I hold the weight in my opposite hand with my leg extended behind me in a flat back. Elongation through the spine, I'm going to reach down and then stand up. If the weight is light enough, you can bring it overhead just to get that extended position. But I also don't want you irritating your shoulders, so I wouldn't do it. Real heavy weight. Okay. Carrie looks doubtful. Like it, yeah.
So you're like bent or straight?
Let me see, I don't bring it up. Just straight. I just bring it right in line with my hip. So guess what else is firing here? Your core that are darn well beyond. Switch your, no, you're right, I'm sorry, you're right.
So, how much are you bending that front knee?
I'm not bending it much. Like Jess, when she did it right there, I couldn't tell if she had a little bit, but she didn't change her bend. So whatever position you start in, you're keeping that position the whole time. Now some of us have short hamstrings, tight hamstrings that may limit your ability to reach. So it's okay to bend a little bit, but you're not bending and straightening the knee throughout the exercise. You're starting in whatever position, reaching down, and then coming back up. And I think this is a tilt. Yeah, we call it like a hip hinge.
Okay.
It's like you're hinging at the hip, but maintaining a flatness of your back. I think this one is really good without any weight, for the balance component of it too. Okay, how many of you do push-ups? You do, yeah? Okay. Will you humor me and do 3 push-ups, please? All of you.
So what are the best ones to do? Is it, there's like knee,
Yeah.
knees,
Well, for these 3, do what you would normally do. I don't care if it's on your knees, I don't care if your arms are wide, if their elbows are in. And you see, as we look around, we see a variety of different types. So now what I want you to try is you're back in that plank position, you're still in that plank position. This time I want you to think about pulling yourself down towards the ground. So kind of resisting that motion down. And as you press up, I want you to corkscrew your elbows in towards your waist. So your elbows are kind of doing that maneuver. So you're pulling down and corkscrewing those elbows up. Let me see. No, they just kind of, you're purposely, I think, keeping them at your side, which is a yoga version, right? So try to go down again. Okay, now pull your elbows in a little bit more. Yeah.
Do your elbows go back or out?
Well, that's a good question. Like Carrie's doing a yoga version, Pilates version is the exact same. Your elbows stay at your side. I don't care so much about that. What I'm looking for is just a recruitment of your lats. So even if you're keeping your elbows at your side, if you can draw them in a little bit more to hug your ribs. Did that feel harder, easier, or no different? Harder. So yes, some people say it's harder. Some people say it's easier and felt more stable. I think the first time I did it, it felt harder because I was recruiting muscles I wasn't used to recruiting. So the concept of, it felt the same, because you're probably doing it that way already. The concept of pulling yourself towards the ground helps kick in a little bit of lat muscle tension. Lat recruitment maintains overall better core stability. So that's all I'm trying to do there, is improve your lat, like recruitment, turn the muscle on. And then this also gives a little bit more lats. So it's just a more stable push-up.
When you say pulling yourself to the ground as opposed to what? What else?
Letting yourself drop. It's more the cueing, like the verbal, Pilates, it's all about cueing. So it's like you're trying to resist or maintain some tension in that muscle as you lower. That's it. Okay. From there, we've got plank with row. This continues to be the bane of my existence. It's such a good exercise. So plank position. I advocate a wide base of support. You want your feet pretty wide. I don't think you need a weight for this, but you certainly can. And you're basically trying to resist the body wanting to rotate. And we're going into a row position with or without a weight. And you feel how you just automatically want to rotate those hips. And you can do alternating arms, you can do same arms. Think about initiating the shoulder blade squeeze. Nope, just holding plank. Yep. Yeah, if you want to, you should do a single arm push-up while you're at it. Good. So try to do that one more time and try to squeeze your shoulder blade before you pull your elbow straight back and let your elbow ride right against your ribcage. Yeah. So imagine that you're doing like a standing row. That's what this is. A row is a scapular stabilizer exercise. It's helping get the muscles between your shoulder blades strong. And then press that ground away through your shoulders. Lift up there just a little bit. There you go. There you go. So it's working these scapular stabilizers as she's doing a motion with her arm, much like running, right? Okay.
Does it matter if she's up higher? Like she could be a little
Yeah, good question.
Lower to the ground.
Oh, you mean like on her forearms or?
Yeah, like on her form, she should be, her butt should be down.
Oh no, I want her up. Because I want a straight line from ponytail through her mid-back, through her tailbone. And that looks pretty good. I would say with you, the only thing I would pick on a little bit is the stability here. Thinking, right? Yeah. See how she wings out a little bit? Not to call her out, I'm sure we're all sticking out a little bit. Yeah. Like her perpetual cheerleader. Wings. I actually saw somebody for that today. Winging scapula syndrome. Yeah.
Winging skeleton.
Okay, lastly we've got our side plank. And let me see what I got you. Side plank, the picture is on extended elbows, and I find just as much benefit on the arm here. The reason I chose side plank is Stuart McGill, he's a spine biomechanist in Canada. He's not a PT, but he's a researcher and knows a ton about the spine. He did a study where he looked at the best core stabilizer exercises with the least amount of compressive forces in the spine. Guess what they were? Side plank, opposite arm, opposite leg, like that old PT exercise, and then a partial curl, which is like his version of like a little mini curl. Since we haven't done anything in this plane of motion for this workout, I chose side plank of those three. So for side plank, you want your shoulder blade down and back. You can go on your forearm or on your extended elbow.
Does it matter?
You tell me.
Yeah, it's harder.
Yeah. So you're changing your stability demands. When you're on your forearm, you're more stable. When you're on an extended arm, you're less stable, and it's more taxing on the shoulder, I think. I think they both serve a purpose and can both be done.
So do you just hold it?
Yeah, so in the handout, also in the same research study, he advocated shorter duration holds with a quick break in between to reset. So I have listed in there 10 count holds with a 2 count break repeated 3 to 5 times. That's what I wrote. So you count to 10, rest, get your form back, pop right back up. It's not like a lazy, I'm gonna check my Facebook, okay, ready to go now. It's you get your form and you're right back up at it.
Does it matter? Because you can do it long or you can do it with your legs bent.
I think that depends on kind of the person's ability. So legs bent is going to be slightly regressed, and there may be, if you're fatigued one day, you do it like that. Longer legs is going to be a more progressed version of that exercise. Yeah. And I mean, we're doing a version of that with some of the other exercises we do in here, but anything where you're holding your body weight up is what I'm looking for there.
And when you say 3 times a week, would be
I think, well, remember that one study is 32% of your training volume, so I think 2 to 3 times a week. 2 times, I would be thrilled. 3 times, I'd probably throw you a parade down it. So if you can, 2 times a week, I think you're great. I found tools that I like to, I love my gadgets. I love my TRX, and I like the Pilates Pilates a lot. I like medicine balls, and so I tend to do it more often, but that's just me.
And then, so, say I'm doing Pilates.
Yeah,
Do I do this plus my Pilates?
good question. I would be interested to see you do it one time a week and Pilates one time a week, and just see what you think. Because I think we get into this habit of, I know my boyfriend always says, well, I don't want to do that one. Well, yeah, because it's the one you need to do. It's the hard one, right? So we get in these routines where we always pick our favorite exercises because they're what we're good at. They're what's easy for us. So I'm the same way. There's certain ones I don't want to do because they're hard. So I think a mix is helpful. In a perfect world, I would probably do 3 days a week, 2 Pilates, 1 TRX, or 2 TRX, 1 Pilates. And I mix other stuff in. I don't think that these 2 things are the only tools out there. I do medicine balls, I do BOSU, I do weights. I don't do a lot of machines because they don't allow the body to move that well, and we want movement.
And you don't have them.
And I don't have them, yes. But that's why I don't have them, is because I don't think they're that awesome. I think you can do a lot with your own body and bag of flour or something. What's that?
I said so maybe the free motion which allows.
Yeah, free motion definitely, sure. If I had 1 tower in here, that's what I would have.
Yeah.
Cool. Any other questions? Awesome. So I think, like I said,